when I was a student. It's the beginning of the war on poverty. It just made so much sense. This is this rich country. It's a disgrace that some people are poor, but we're wise. We can set up programs. We can fix this. And they set up welfare. And you look at the numbers, the poverty line dropped for the first 7 years when welfare began. And it should have. They were giving people money. But of course, they kept going. We've spent $71 trillion on it so far. But what's the long-term result? Progress stopped after those 7 years. We taught people, we encouraged people to be dependent. We created something never seen before, a permanent underclass of fatherless children because you lost money if you were married. You didn't get the welfare check. And even more horrifying is if you look at before the war on poverty began, Americans were lifting ourselves out of poverty on our own. Government continued the progress for 7 years and then stopped it. It's what government does again and again, and government grows. This is a graph of the size of the state since the beginning of the Republic. The first blip is World War I, then World War II, the bigger one, and spending used to go down after wars. But after that, it's only gone up, and I haven't updated this chart. It's gone up even more. It's unsustainable. We have to deal with this. We have to explain to people what works and that this doesn't work. And it ought to be easy because you can see what works. Our ideas work. Look at, as Milton Friedman used to cite, Hong Kong. This little island with no natural resources, it's just a rock. It went from third world to first world in 50 years. We know what creates prosperity. Why doesn't everybody do it? What happened in Hong Kong? Well, they had economic freedom, the main ingredient that lets people make themselves prosperous. It's actually not just economic freedom. You need rule of law. You need to know that if you build a factory, the dictator isn't going to take it from you, or somebody isn't going to steal all your product. So those two things. And they had this in Hong Kong. British rulers prevented people from killing each other, or stealing each other's stuff. And then they did something wonderful. They sat around and drank tea. They left free people alone to pursue their own interests, and Hong Kong prospered. I mean, we know what works. It's easy to start a business, or it was in Hong Kong. I started one in a day. It just took a 1-hour trip to get a permit. My business was a stupid business selling ABC yo-yos and frisbees that nobody bought, but that ability to try something is what made prosperity possible. Now, for this hour, ABC sent me around the world. They were spending big in those days, and we stopped in India, where if you want to start a business, you have to get permission from these people. And it could take years, and good ideas died on those shelves in the background. I mean, why is India poor? People from India get rich when they come to free countries. India is poor, I would argue, just because of intuitive regulation. There ought to be a law. The stuff that my wife and most Americans still believe. We have the answer. We ought to follow it. I mean, China has killed Hong Kong, sadly. Democrats want more regulation. They argue that, look, we're not taking care of the poor. Income disparity, the poor are so poor and they're suffering, and yet they ignore the benefits of free markets. And think about it. The kings and queens of Versailles didn't have the lives that the average American poor person has now. We have air conditioning, flush toilets, fresh fruit in the winter, music and theater on demand, pain relief, cars, airplanes, electric life, better lives than the kings had. Because of capitalism, which is now vilified in most American media. I mean, Think of the supermarket. It's a miracle. I mean, a zillion products, wide aisles. It's open 24/7. Prices are cheap. They rarely poison you. But we don't thank capitalism when we go to the supermarket. We don't think about it that when you could take a piece of plastic and give it to a stranger in a foreign country who doesn't even speak English, and he'll rent you a car for a week. And when you get home, Visa or MasterCard will have the accounting correct to the penny. You'll scream if they don't. And yet government can't even count the votes accurately. But people want more government. Government fails, individuals succeed. I want to retire. I'm 1,000 years old. I need one of you to replace me. So please, we have to explain the beauty of this. Please come, apply to replace me, and thank you very much, Students for Liberty.